All right, it is 12 o'clock, and we would like to welcome you today to our second in a series of 10 webinars focused on affordable housing, where we'll take a deeper dive today into Section 8. My name is Kenya Burrell Van Wormer, and it's a pleasure to be with you today. I serve as a past chair of the Houston Association of Realtors, a current co-chair of governmental affairs, and a regional vice president for the Texas Realtors. I'm honored to be your official moderator for today's program. Our theme for this annual program is Opening More Doors in 2021. This is a timeless theme that was created in 2000, 21 years ago by past HAR Chair Frankie Jefferson. Frankie's legacy continues today with each webinar geared towards educating the Realtor community about programs, solutions, and opportunities for your clients in this ever-changing financial environment. Throughout the year, we hope to provide information that will create more awareness and take away stigmas associated with the idea of affordable housing and NIMBYism. All sessions will take place on the third Wednesday of the month from 12 to 1:30, and you can register online at har.com/webinars for each of the sessions. Today's program is presented by industry experts Allison Griffin and Shad Bogany. This program is centered around learning more about Section 8 housing and all that the voucher program entails for homeownership. Before I introduce your program experts, I would like to remind you to put your questions in the chat box throughout the afternoon. You can choose for the questions to go to everyone or just the panelists, and know that each question will be fielded and addressed as time permits today. And since I know you will ask, this and all the upcoming webinars will be recorded and available later online at the HAR TV YouTube channel, har.com/HAR TV. Now let's get started. Let's meet our panel of experts, Allison Griffin and Shad Bogany. Allison Griffin is a sales manager with First Choice Loan Services Incorporated with more than 25 years in the mortgage business. She has weathered changing markets, changing regulations, and changing processes. I think we need to change your name to Allison Griffin Change at this point. Recognized as a go-to expert in her field, Allison has a track record of closing difficult and outside-the-box loans. Welcome, Allison.
Thank you. Just a quick update for you. First Choice is bought up by Cross Country.
Okay, thank you.
Just in case somebody asks. Okay.
Perfect, thank you. Shad Bogany has been an active realtor in the Houston area for more than 28 years. Throughout the years, Shad has served in several leadership roles, most notably in 2013 when he was chairman of the Texas Association of Realtors, and in 2002 was chairman for the Houston Association of Realtors. He's a past board member of the Texas Department of Housing and Community Affairs. And I would also like to recognize and congratulate Shad on his latest accomplishment, being named Realtor of the Year by the Texas Association of Realtors. Now over to you and Allison and Shad, our Section 8 specialists.
Thank you, and thank you for having me today. Shad, I don't know if you want to start off by saying anything first. Are you on mute, Shad?
Thank you. Our goal today is to open more doors and show the HAR membership and other realtors around the state who may be on this webinar on there's another opportunity out there that we've not been touching base with. And so I'm going to turn it over to Allison. We're going to go through these slides, and I will share with you it works. I've done them, and it's a great program. And so I'm going to turn it over to Allison.
Well, thank you so much, Shad. And thank you for having me here today. I see we've got quite a large attendance. So I'm going to try to be as thorough as I can. I've been helping families on housing since 2005. So a long time. And it's kind of become a specialty for me because I've got so deep in it. So if we could go to that, I thought we'd start it off by going through an overview. So if you can go to the next slide. All right, hang on with me 1 second. Apparently I shrunk my screen and don't know how to increase it. Hold on a second. All right, So the housing choice voucher program. I know a lot of people know that the term Section 8. In the early 2000s, they changed the term to housing choice voucher because it had such a negative connotation being Section 8. I use the term Section 8 just because it's more familiar. If I use the term housing choice voucher, everybody scratches their head and like, hey, what's that? So the key thing to remember when you're helping these families is everybody wants to make it complicated. The housing choice voucher is nothing more than just a source of income. That's it. Everybody, I hear a lot where people say, oh, well, they've got to be in a certain area or they've got to be in a certain housing. That's not true. They do have to stay in a certain geographical area for what the housing authority offers as far as their service area. But if you just remember, hey, it's just a source of income, it's going to help me qualify that buyer for more house. Also, when we use that income as a lender, mortgage qualification can be, the voucher can be used as income or as an offset. So I'm sure a lot of the realtors out there are familiar with Social Security benefits or other non-taxable income. And that's exactly how we use it on our loan, should we choose to use it as income on the mortgage. The real added benefit is if I'm able to use what's called the offset model. Under that model, we would take the full payment, for example, let's say $1,800, and then we would subtract off whatever the housing authority is paying. So if the housing authority is paying $1,200 and the voucher can go up to $1,800, then I'm only qualifying the buyer on $600 of their mortgage. So it helps them qualify for more homes. Usually when the voucher is paying more than 50% of the mortgage, you almost always have to be able to use the offset because the math won't work for qualifying. The highest sales price I've been able to close in Harris County was for $325,000, which helps a lot in the marketplace. The third item on here is buyers are not restricted to stay at or below the monthly payment standard. If you've helped families on the Section 8 rental side, I'm sure you're familiar with the maximum rent they can pay. So if their maximum rent was $1,800, then under the rental agreement, they can't exceed that. However, in homeownership, they don't put a cap on it. Now, I don't think it's prudent underwriting standards or lending to go too much above that. So I usually have a rule of 10%, not to exceed, but the guidelines state if the buyer can qualify for a $2,500 payment, they're not capped at the $2,500, at the $1,800. So I would implore, the realtor partners, and I'm here to help other lenders too. So if you've got lenders that want to participate, I'm open to talking to them and explaining to them how this works. It's not hard, but the key thing is we need to be a responsible lender and responsible to the community because we don't want to get these families in over their head. And I'm Shad to talk a little bit more about that here in a minute when we show some houses. Buyer must purchase in the housing authority service area. So each housing authority has a geographical area that they service. The buyer cannot go outside that area. Now, they can move housing authorities. So if I have someone in Harris County that wants to live in Richmond-Rosenberg, then I've had families move their voucher, it's called portaling, to Richmond-Rosenberg area. And I'm going to show you a map here in a minute so you can have an example. The next item is buyers must have an HSQ, that's Housing Standard Qualifications, and a third-party inspection. Even if it's new construction, it is in the Federal Register that they have to have that third-party inspection. And HSQ has to be ordered from the housing authority, and they typically will not order that HSQ until appraisal's been done and everything else has been done on the property. Lastly, and the biggest challenge that we run into when I partner with my realtors is typically this buyer has to have some sort of down payment assistance program. So I'll use Houston as an example. Houston and Harris County both have a down payment assistance program. If the property pays City of Houston taxes, then we have to go to the City of Houston down payment assistance. Even though they're getting Harris County assistance on the voucher, if the property they're interested in pays City of Houston taxes, then I have to go to them for down payment. There's added restrictions on the property. Houston doesn't have a sales price limit. However, Harris County does. So Harris County says you can't exceed on resale a $200,000 sales price, and the home must be built at 1979 or later. So that just kind of gives you an example, as I know we've got some people on the call outside of Houston, and I'm more than happy to walk through people past that, but I just want to give that as an example. Next slide. This is an example of the Harris County Housing Authority service map. So as you can see, there's different areas that will pay more money. If you look on the bottom left, it'll show you in green 120% service area. What that means to the buyer is the housing authority will pay more money in those areas for rent because it's a more expensive area. So for example, the buyer that was at 1,800 now 2,300 because they're in a higher district for funding. Then they've got the 110, which would be somewhere between the 1,800 and 2,300. And then there's the direct service area. But notice that all the brown areas, so anything in brown, they're not going to cover. Next slide. Can you go to the next slide, Teresa? Here's an example of how the payment standards can range. So now imagine, whoops, too far. Here we go. This is the real challenge for a realtor. And boy, Shad and I have gone back and forth, and because it can get a little confusing and it takes a lot of patience. But notice how on a 2-bedroom standard can go from, at the very top, goes from 1804 down to 1206. That's a big range. So as a lender trying to put out a pre-approval gets a little bit challenging on, how do I predict a sales price? So what I tell the realtors, look, we got to keep a payment in this range. If we got lower taxes like we have in the City of Houston, I can go up higher in sales price. If I'm in the county, typically those taxes are a little bit higher, so it puts the sales price a little bit lower. So I will usually send out at my best estimate on whatever zip code the buyer is interested in and say, okay, if you're going to be interested in 005 and 014, here's kind of your estimate on a 110 area and then 120% area. So they can start shopping. And then as a realtor finds the property, then I just crunch my numbers to make sure, hey, I'm within my payment standard. Or like I said, it within 10%. So for example, on the 1206 payment, I would want to make sure I really wasn't more than about 1,300 or maybe 1,320. And next slide, and then Shad, I'm gonna let you go over the next slide.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about understanding these types of buyers. Most of them are first-generation buyers in their family. Buyers require more information, education from us as realtors, and breaking down the home owning is different from renting, and it's a totally different. So you're going to explain that now they're going to be responsible for making sure that repairs are done. You're going to share with them the difference between renting and owning. Greater Houston area, we have about 30,000 families on housing with housing vouchers. Nationwide is 2.3 million families in housing. And it's really key that we understand that home buyer and be able to guide them through the process. And I think in this slide here, the most important thing is the education from the realtor
Mhm.
and the post-education after they purchase, and always being a resource there for them. Because I've had people call me and say, hey, Shad, I got this tax bill in the mail. What am I supposed to do with it? And we would immediately tell them to send that to the title company, just as we would do with any other buyer. So it's no difference there, but I think these buyers have never owned a home before. And most of them that have been on the voucher program have been living in apartments where somebody takes care of everything that breaks. Now there's going to be their responsibility in that process. And one of the things I would share with you is also talk to them about home warranty. This is something that would be very helpful to those home buyers. Next slide. Okay.
All right. Go ahead, Chad.
All right. Let's talk about the key questions for realtors to ask. Which housing authority are you with? Which is what Allison just went through, whether it's Harris County, whether it's Fort Bend, whether it's in the Houston, Montgomery County. The other question is, how's your credit? And these are questions we should be asking any buyer that comes through, but it's really important here. How's your credit? When is your lease up? Are you on a month-to-month? Or is it a lease buyout? And this is one key. If their lease is out, you really need to encourage them to go the month-to-month so they have that flexibility if we find something that they can afford. How much money do you have to save, Allison?
Yeah, well, right now in this market, they need to at least have 1% of whatever sales price they're looking at. They need to have money for their inspection and also for the appraisal. So I tell people anywhere from $2,500 to $3,000.
And the other question, how long have they been on their job? What do you think?
Housing has a requirement, and it's in the federal guidelines. They have to be employed for a minimum of 1 year. So I know recently, because of COVID, I had a buyer that was really upset because she was laid off or put on furlough for 6 months, but I can't use the income, and that's a federal guideline. Even though I could get her a mortgage on my end because she's gone back to work, housing cannot issue that voucher. But typically we want them on, for a mortgage, we want them on a job for at least 2 years. They can have different employers. If I'm an electrician and I start off at ABC Electric and then I decide to go to XYZ Electric because I'm gonna get more money, that's fine. I just can't have a teacher that decides, well, I don't like teaching, and then I go back to being a cashier at Walgreens. I'll probably question that. Next slide. Or unless you want to add to it, Shad?
No, you did a great
Okay.
job.
Okay.
Good.
I'm gonna let you talk about the benefits a little bit, Shad.
All right, I appreciate it. Let's talk about the benefits of home ownership. It's all about wealth building. And this is really, really key in the communities that are on vouchers because most of them have very little net worth. Families can live where they want, schools, the communities. Once in a home ownership voucher, you can't be downsized. So once they're there, they're there. 30 years or less, you own the home, the pride of home ownership. And I think the really key is creating generation wealth. And what we found with surveys with Harris County and the Houston Housing Authority, I think more with Harris County, that most of these families are off the voucher system in 5 years. Because what happens now? The children are now know that they're going to be at that home. They're doing better in school. All the things that we tell buyers that home ownership is going to do for them, these Section 8 renters or voucher are going to have those same benefits. So we're actually you're changing the whole lives of families. Mm-hmm. And it's just incredible. Do we have a video?
I don't know if we do, Shad.
Okay, all right, maybe if you didn't put it in there, but creating generation wealth is just something that really changes the lives of families. And the last thing I'll say in regards to this particular slide the pride of ownership is there. And especially when they're the first people in their family to own a home.
Mhm.
And it's just, I just can't tell you, once you close one of these and see the reaction on those kids, I've got my own room. Oh, now I'm going to be going to this school, mom, for the I can finish out my elementary or my junior high here. It's just an amazing thing, and for me, it's been the most pleasurable thing is selling a housing voucher to family because it's just so much thankful that they're just
Yeah.
oozing with thanks.
Appreciation. Yeah.
It's really there.
Well, and if I can add to that, I became passionate about this because I saw the change socially that happened. And since I've been doing it so long, I had a family that I closed in 2011. She had 4 children. The oldest was a young man just entering his high school years. And she's very worried about him going to a certain school and getting in a gang. So she was able to buy a brand new house and get them in a better school district. And I got a phone call last year because now that he's seen his mom get on a house, guess what? He wants to become a homeowner. So he's got himself a girlfriend, he's got himself a job, he's going through a trade school, and he's working towards become a homeowner. And to me, that is the most rewarding part of this program, is showing them that, yes, you can do this. Not to quote Obama that yes, you can, but yes, you can do this. And yes, you can break that cycle of poverty. And I've had families that have sold their houses and now they're buying $400,000 and $500,000 houses when they started out in the $100,000 KB home back when Mayor White was in office. So the other big issue that I really want to stress as you talk to these buyers, a lot of them don't know that that voucher can't be downsized. So if they've got teenage children, now's the time to get in a home, because once they're in the home, they have to pay at a bare minimum that amount. And most of them don't know that. And that's why they're afraid to go to homeownership. They're afraid, well, my children are going to leave and I'm going to go to a 1-bedroom. Not true. Anything else on that one, Chad?
Yeah, I'd like to give the example, and you maybe remember this. This was the first one that me and you did together. Young lady worked at Cazolet. She had 3 kids herself. She was a waitress at Cazolet. And then her sister got in an accident or something happened to the sister. So those 2 kids had to move in with her. It was a total of 5. She was working minimum wage job at Cazolet. And we were able to sell her a house in Newport down in Dayton area, Crosby area. And it was just to see those children's face when that mom got those keys and they said, this house is ours. It was just unbelievable. Do you remember that one?
Oh, I do. I remember the phone calls, and they took a picture of their ceiling because they said it's mine. And I mean, I just never thought of taking a picture of a ceiling to know it's mine. So laying awake at night, not knowing if they're going to be kicked out, not knowing how to deal with a landlord, that ceiling now I can lay my head on the bed, on my pillow, and know it's mine. And the kids running around the backyard. So now the parents are happy. We had the one issue, with one of the builders who didn't want to sell to a Section 8 family. And the realtor went out there and met with the salesperson, because the daughter was getting way too much attention from some of the boys in the neighborhood. She's worried to leave the daughter there when she got home from school. So she was having trouble in her job because she's having to leave the job every day at 2:30. She's too afraid for the daughter being there. Well, the salesperson was so sold, by the time he met the mom, met the daughter, he went and bought her a refrigerator. And they got best yard of the month or whatever they call it. 2 months after they moved in, they got yard of the month. It's very rewarding. I mean, it changes these families' lives completely. Next slide. Okay, this is where I get a lot of questions. And Shad, feel free to jump in, but I'll start it off. There's 2 types of housing in this country. You have public housing, which is tied to real estate. So, and that's probably what most people hear the most about is, I don't want this in my backyard. And they've built an apartment complex that has been designated public housing. And what that means is, if I move in that apartment complex and I get a 1-bedroom, then I may only pay $100 a month because the complex itself is subsidized. What we're talking about is the housing choice voucher, and that goes with the buyer. I mean, I've had people that have come from New York that have bought in Houston. I recently had a lady from Denver, Colorado that transferred to Harris County a year ago on the voucher, and she just bought a house. She never thought she could buy a house because in Colorado, the housing was a lot more expensive. So the most important thing to find out from the customer is, do you have the voucher that's portable? Like, can you choose where you live and will that money go with you? That's the best question I've learned over the years to ask the customer, because they don't even know the difference. They just know, oh yeah, I can go anywhere. I've got to stay within this one area. Then Houston Housing Authority requires that the family participates in Family Self-Sufficiency Program. That's a program to help stabilize the family and get them up and off Section 8 housing. One of the options is going into homeownership. Right now, the Houston Housing Authority wants them in the program for 2 years. We're working with them, and we'd love lots of participation to help us work with the Houston Housing Authority to shorten that time frame. Houston Housing Authority doesn't require any time frame. What they require is that they get pre-approved with a lender so they can go out shopping, and then they'll convert the voucher. So you'll hear a lot about family self-sufficiency from some of these families. The other added benefit is that they have what's called an escrow account. That buyer can have money saved at housing up to $40,000. I had one lady had $40,000 saved in FSS. So that would be another question you'd want to ask the buyer is, do you participate in the Family Self-Sufficiency Program? And if you do you have any money in the escrow account? So I think that sums up that slide. Next slide. This goes into a little bit more detail about the FSS program, how they're matching funds in escrow, and they're really trying to support the homeownership program to do that. Next slide. Here's a really important slide. What do I need to qualify for a mortgage? And it is no different than any other buyer that I get pre-approved for a home. With the voucher, they must be a first-time home buyer. So, and that's defined as someone who has not owned a home in the past 3 years. A lot of the families know they've got credit issues. Great, let's get you engaged. Let's get you educated. MyFICO.com pulls the exact same credit scores that I will pull as a lender. And it's one of the tests Shad and I have learned over the years that if you're not sure, let's see how committed you are to go into home ownership. It's $60 to pull the report. And I can tell you, Shad and I had one buyer. It took her 6 months. She worked with the MyFICO system. She got her credit score above a 640, and Shad had her closed in 45 days with the 2 children. She had 2 boys. Remember that closing, Shad, we had back in November, December, a couple years ago? Yeah. So it's really important because they don't understand. And the MyFICO website has a ton of information for them to learn. And the interesting piece I learned when I first started helping these families is I asked them, what was the most important thing that you got out of the home ownership? Every time they answered the 8-hour homebuyer education. They are so hungry for education because no one's helping them get educated. They love the MyFICO website. And it's amazing to me. I have other buyers that I send to MyFICO. They don't even try. My Section 8 buyers, they go out there 4 or 5, 6 months later, they come back. Ms. Griffin, we're all ready. And they send in their docs. Income. I went over a little bit of this earlier. It's really important as you talk to lenders to make sure they're using that voucher amount as qualifying income on the mortgage. There is a whole host of lenders out there that refuse to use the voucher as qualifying income. Even though the CFPB put out a bulletin stating that this falls under a COA, Equal Credit Opportunity Act, that it is considered a protective activity. I recently been helping one lender, and she's great. She's a teacher that became a lender, and educated her to that. And interesting now that her lender will take the voucher amount. So a lot of lenders will say, hey, we'll do these loans, but they're not including the voucher as qualifying. So it's limiting what these buyers can go out and purchase. Full-time employment. The housing authority needs them to work at least minimum wage for at least 12 months. The only exception to that is the elderly disabled. And lastly, is the money saved to be purchased for their home will vary depending on what other programs can be used. I usually tell my clients they need to have, in today's market in Houston, you need to have somewhere between $2,500 to $3,000 minimum to purchase a home. Shad, did you want to add to any of that?
You know, one of the things that is the disabled side of it, we were able to put someone in a home that was disabled, very little income, but she was paying the money. She was on the voucher system at an apartment, and it actually did work for her, and she was disabled. So when people call you and they say they're on the voucher program or they're disabled, or they tell you they're disabled and they've got disabled income, the next question is, who is your, do you have money coming in on the voucher? Do you have a housing voucher? That's the first question I would ask somebody if they said they were disabled. And a lot of them are on housing vouchers. And so that was a lady that had a couple of sons, and she was just there. She didn't work every day. The only income she had was her Social Security check that came in for being disabled. So it does work. And that's the thing that I like to also let you know. These loans can be closed in 30 days to 45 days. Allison has done them fairly quickly, but the key is understanding the program and following the rules. Just understand it. Don't try to get off, well, we're going to do it. No, just follow what the rules are. Stay on track, stay on the rail, and it does work.
Yeah, and to add to that, as far as an example, the benefit in the community and where the Houston Housing Authority took an interest is, well, there's one of the buyers that Shad knows about. He was a disabled vet. He's 71 years old and never owned a home. His total rental was $810 a month, and he'd been in rental for about 5 years. We got him transitioned into a home, and once the homestead exemption and the disability exemption came in, his total mortgage payment was $549. So guess what? He's off the voucher, because his portion that he had to pay was $610 between his VA disability and his Social Security. So that's a relief to the Houston Housing Authority, because now they've got someone that's graduated off the program, which opens it up for the next person that needs the help. But there's tons of those type of stories. We just have to get the word out.
Right.
Next slide. What would I need to use to qualify for my mortgage? A continuation. The buyers must attend the HUD 8-hour mandatory class. I get a lot of questions about this because, like, well, it's too long. Well, I can do the bond program. It's only 30 minutes. This is a federal mandate. They must do the HUD 8-hour. It used to be that the Houston Housing Authority required the buyer to attend this prior to even applying for a mortgage. I don't believe they've got that requirement anymore, but it is mandatory. So when I get an application in, the first thing I ask them, have you done your 8 hours? A lot of these people are working families, so it's hard for them to take off to go to class. Now with COVID, most of these classes have been on Zoom, which is great. Once COVID's lifted, I don't know if they'll make it mandatory in person again, but it used to be in person. So mom or dad is having to sit in a class all day Saturday, or Tuesdays and Thursdays for 4 hours during the week. And then we get a certificate that we've got to have in our file. Next slide. The monthly payment, what does the voucher cover? It covers PITI, principal and interest, taxes, and insurance and mortgage insurance. The one thing that they don't cover is the maintenance fee. So if you're looking at condos, it can be a little tricky because even though my total payment might be the $1,800, if $400 of that is the home maintenance or the HOA, the buyer has to qualify for that outside of the mortgage payment. So that's where it gets a little tricky with condos, but most of Houston, they're fine. The HOAs are low. And they pay, you know, the buyer has to pay the monthly utilities, the maintenance, and they have the option for flood insurance. Now, if they do choose to have flood insurance, the housing authority will cover that in the voucher amount. Next slide. You want to talk about that one, Chad?
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about this here. After the home is selected, make sure you meet the HSQ inspection criteria. So I explained to the buyers that you're going to do, in my opinion, you can do a regular inspection, and then the housing authority is going to send someone out to inspect. Or you could just work off the HSQ. What I've also found is that if I've done a housing inspection and the inspector comes out for the HSQ, I give him that inspection. Mm-hmm. It seems to go a lot easier and smoother with that process. You secure the home with negotiations after you have gotten a written contract. Turn in the contract to the lender and the housing authority, follow all directions, request for any additional information in timely fashion. Communication is really important. And some of you are going to laugh when I say this. All this texting doesn't work in this program. Okay? You're going to have to pick up the phone, make that phone call, because it's really, really important that you have the communication in that process. And after, you know, what types of homes? This could be a new home, it could be a condo, townhouse, but the real key is the condition of the home. So if you've got a home, guys, and you've selected a home and it's an as-is, it is not going to work in this program. Probably the best home for this program is a new home, but we've done them both ways. It just depends on the condition. And when you're negotiating this contract, you negotiate it like it's any regular contract. What's the time frame normally to get one of these done, Allison?
Depending on the down payment assistance. I mean, I closed the City of Houston one in 3.5 weeks. Okay. Harris County, they want 45 days.
Okay. Would you explain to them that the down payment assistance with the Houston, what they should be doing if they've got a potential buyer before they start looking for housing?
Right. So City of Houston requires that the buyer applies in advance and they get a certificate, like a pre-approval. And that process usually takes about 30 days. And I encourage everybody to, you know, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. So they're busy just like everybody else, and they're doing a fabulous job at Houston running the program, but they're busy. So then once they've got that in hand, then there's very little I have to do as a lender. Once I get my appraisal in, I ship it over there with some other documents and they start their process. Harris County works kind of in reverse, where we get the loan application, we get everything, then we ship a package over to Harris County.
Allison, one thing before we leave this slide, I wanted to mention on the inspection. If the ceiling fan is shaking, it's going to be required to be not shaking.
Correct.
If the gate latch is loose, it's going to be required to be tightened. So when they do these inspections, they're looking for health and safety issues, just as most FHA inspectors are doing. But keep in mind, these buyers have never owned a home. They're new to the whole process. So they want to make sure that these homes are in really, really good condition. And so I would advise you stay away from as-is properties. Anything that needs the work done to it, it's probably not good for this program. New homes seem to work the best in this program, but now we're having the challenge with home prices and how prices are going up. And that's why we've asked Houston Association of Realtors and Government Affairs, because we're having challenges of getting in Harris County the price raised from 200 to a little bit more realistic price, and getting resales raised a little bit more because resale prices. And then we're challenging. Alice and I have been challenging them on the time. So if the house is built in 78, 79, typically they don't want to go to that point. They want things before then. Well, the problem is that a lot of these houses have already been updated because either the investors taken them, re-updated them, put new paint, carpet, new so they're a little bit more affordable. So we should be able to do that. And this has been a challenge for us with Allison and I, and we encourage anything that anybody that's on this call with us today, call your county commissioner, talk to them, because this is another way for people to be able to create wealth and get that first home.
Yes. Okay, next slide. Closing, the happy day, the buyer gets the keys. So as a lender, the final thing I have to do with the housing authority is I have to have my final payment. That means I've got to get my tax cert in that certifies what the monthly taxes are. I've got to get my homeowner's insurance in. And once I have that final payment, I get a final payment letter from the housing authority that tells me, hey, if my total mortgage payment is $1,759, then they're going to calculate how much of that they're going to cover. And I have to have that for my final loan submission. Sometimes these numbers can vary. So you got to be careful, any lenders that are out there, making sure you don't overshoot it. So you don't get burned in the very end of this. Then it also goes on to talk about how the two options. Now, we will do the dual payment. I've been doing that for about 2 years now. What that means is that the housing authority will send their portion to us as a servicer, cross-country mortgage. So if the housing authority is paying $1,000 on behalf of Shad Bogany, then that $1,000 is going to go to cross-country, and then Shad's going to send his $759 to match up at the servicer, hence the term dual payment. And that's how I'm able to qualify them for more house typically. Now, if we do it and they want to have it paid to the lender, which they can do that, then the home buyer is responsible for making the full payment. They will get money in their bank account, and then they're responsible for sending that monthly payment. Some housing authorities only will do dual payment. Some housing authorities will only pay to the buyer. So now Houston and Harris County will do either. We just have to let them know which way the buyer is going. The dual payment. Yeah, go ahead, Chad.
Well, no, go ahead and finish and I'll come back.
The dual payment is similar to rental. So when I explained to the buyer, I said, listen, the dual payment's just like when you're in rental. The housing authority pays the landlord, and then you pay the landlord. And then if it's to the buyer, there's some added risk if the buyer doesn't make their mortgage payment, since the housing authority has advanced money to them. But go ahead, Chad.
Yeah, and I think your last comment is the key to the dual payment. Allison worked quite a bit on getting this dual payment set up because we thought it was the best thing for the homeowner. If for some reason car breaks down, the money goes in, well, we'll make this payment, we'll use this money to fix that car or whatever issue that's there, and then we'll catch up on our payment. We believe that the dual payment is the best way to make this program be successful. And Allison has worked very hard to do that. She's gotten Harris County on it, and she's gotten the Houston Housing Authority on it. So one of the things when you're working with a lender, you may want to ask them, are you guys doing dual payment? Because it really does help that homeowner. And the key to it all is that if you have a happy homeowner, what are they going to do, realtors? They're going to give you referrals of other people who are looking to buy houses. So you want to make it as seamless and easy as possible and successful.
Yeah, and to add to that, Shad has been extremely instrumental in helping me get this through. So we've worked as a team over the past 3 to 4 years to kind of push some of this stuff through. Next slide. Duration of assistance. We get this a lot. So there's 2 categories that the Housing Authority has. You have non-disabled and elderly, and then you have elderly and disabled. So if I've got a non-disabled household, then they will receive assistance up to 15 years. Some of these files, like the lady we were talking about earlier that Shad mentioned, I can put them on a 20-year term and I still get the 15 years assistance, so long as I'm not exceeding that payment voucher. And with rates being as low as they are, I probably had 3 or 4 this year that I could put on a 20-year term, so it accelerates that payoff. If the loans are for less than 20 years assistance, then it goes down to 10. Next slide. Now, if they're disabled or elderly, then there's no limit. If I had a 50-year mortgage, then they would get assistance for 50 years, provided that they didn't income out, meaning they didn't earn more income that would disqualify them for the program. The housing voucher is based on being at or below 80% area median income. So every year they go through an approval process to make sure they're still within that income bracket. Next slide. Change in assistance. The other thing that's important to go over with the buyer is to make sure they understand it's just like when they're in rental. Every year they go through an income analysis, and to make sure that they're still under the 80% area median income. So, and that amount can change. So if, for example, someone lost their job, then the housing authority steps in and pays the whole mortgage. But let's say that I get promoted and I went from making $25,000 a year to making $35,000 a year. Well, they're going to adjust my amount to where I'm going to pay more. But the great thing is most of these families, it's only 30% of their income. I'm approving buyers a day using 40% of their income for housing. But the housing authority keeps them right around 30%, which is great. Next slide. And so we talk about the loss of income. So the other added benefit is that if for some reason like COVID is a great example, we had families that lost their job. They reported to housing, and housing stepped in and paid the whole mortgage payment. And this goes back to what I mentioned about the fair market rents. So when we started off, we talked about how the buyer would have $1,800 a month would be the most in the rental. If I close the mortgage higher than the fair market rent, then the buyer is still liable for the difference. The housing authority won't pick up that part. That's why I think it's so very important that we're all responsible about this and make sure they understand that, look, it's great that you can qualify for that, but are we going to put this buyer in harm's way? An example of over-qualifying them would be my example of the elderly person that we know after closing, they're going to benefit by saving $200 and $300 a month in the payment. So once they close and I can adjust the taxes, sure, they're within the fair market rent. So I approved them higher originally, but we filed all the paperwork once they closed. So then that payment dropped immediately and they reported it back to housing. And just to reiterate that they re-verify income once a year. And they also, right now, the buyers don't have to go through the home inspection. So in Houston, they no longer have to have anybody from the housing authority come and inspect the home. That's always subject to change, as I know some housing authorities will require that, but homeownership does not require that the housing authority inspect the home like they do in rental. And I know it's a big complaint we hear in rental. Do you want to add anything to that, Shad?
Yep, you did a great job.
Okay, and I think our last slide is really on questions. I think that's our next one up. So I think at this point, let's just go to see what kind of questions they have. We can weave these questions in also, but I see a lot of questions coming through on the chat box.
We do have a lot. In fact, great presentation, Allison and Shad. You know, we have questions and comments, and I think we have some very favorable comments for you, Allison, about,
oh, well, thanks.
Yeah, about you being such a blessing to so many clients who want to get into a home. So this has been a great opportunity for us to learn more about what you do and for others to actually thank you for the work that you've done for them. We have quite a few questions, so I'm going to start from the top, if that's okay with you all.
Sure.
Do you think some of the questions on the slide may be relevant, though, because I don't know if this will address all of the questions in the chat box. If you want to run through just a few of those, it may be relevant, and I'll speed my way up through the questions that have come in the chat box.
I would go to the chat box because most of these we've already addressed.
Okay, that sounds good. Not a problem at all. Bear with me just one moment.
Sure.
All right.
And really, I put this slide together because these are like the generic questions I usually get asked from the buyer and the realtor. So that's really the whole purpose of that one voucher slide.
No problem. One question that we've already been able to address is, yes, everyone will have access to the slides and they will have access to the recording at the end of the session. So expect that from us. Oh, this just popped me out of my text box. Okay, here we go. Let's see. Lots of great comments, but let me get to some questions. All right. Here's a question from Shadra Patton. Does Houston have a program available for people that need housing based upon income outside of Section 8? Section 8 will take too long to get approved and she needs to move here from Louisiana. She's on an income rent program in Louisiana as well.
Shad, you want to?
Yeah, that's possibly what she needs to find out, if she can port that program from Louisiana over to Harris County, or what county she's moving to. We've actually had people do that.
Mm-hmm.
So what she needs to do is check with her local housing authority where she's moving from, and then at that point, see if she can port that program over to Houston or Fort Bend or Harris County or Montgomery, whatever part of the state that she's going to live in. And one of the key questions is to always ask your local association, I say association, but ask your local housing authority if they do Section 8 voucher program, because that's something that we don't do a lot of times, is ask. But the portal concept is what she would be using.
Okay. Did you want to comment as well, Allison?
No, I think Shad covered it.
Okay. The next question we have is from Nellie Mitford, and her question is, does the housing authority area have any correlation with the OZ zones? I'm assuming opportunity zones. Just curious.
Shad, I don't know about that. Yeah.
Not to my knowledge. The opportunity zones, though, are in those zip codes that the zip codes that Allison started the program with. I'm willing to bet some of those are in those opportunity zones, typically. So if you go to those zip codes and if you get a copy of the slides, I'm almost willing to bet that some of those zip codes are in the opportunity zones.
Okay, that makes sense. We have a question from Zelda Kane. How does a buyer qualify through Section 8 to purchase? I have had several buyers that I've discussed the program with, and they've never heard of it. I've referred them back to the caseworker, and they are returning, stating it will take them 5 years to qualify through the program.
That's where, yeah, I'll take that one, Shad. That's where education comes. That's been my fighting mantra for 15 years. It all goes back to qualifying. And, you know, starting with a lender in the Federal Register, it does talk about if a buyer gets pre-approved on an FHA, VA, USDA loan, any of the agency products, they're supposed to convert that voucher. Now, that's if they have a homeownership program, because the housing authority has a choice to do homeownership or not. But there's so much misinformation out there about what qualifies, what doesn't qualify for the buyer. So, and it all boils back to the lender too. I had 3 files in this week that the lender just didn't even know how to use the voucher. I cannot stress enough to all the realtors out there, if you have a lending partner that wants to learn more, I'm available. More lenders need to do this. It's counterintuitive that I'd be sharing my competition. There's too many families that need the help. We need to get the education out there. And honestly, I don't even want to begin to try to take on 30,000 families, because right now I've got families from California calling me, from Florida, from Michigan, trying to educate. And that's why Shad and I are partnering to educate everybody. But I would start with, which housing authority are you with? Houston's a little harder than Harris County. And get the buyer pre-approved. Have them go out to MyFICO. Is their credit score there? Have they worked for a year? Because I'm seeing a lot right now going through COVID due to them being through furlough, and I can't qualify them. And then once you know you can get them a mortgage, then push the housing authority. That's where we need everybody's help on this call, so we can engage our politicians. We can engage these housing authorities, because what I hear is, oh, Allison, you're just that smart. No, I'm really not that smart. I'm stubborn and I'm persistent, but I'm really not that smart. Because I think what I've done is an accident, and it's not an accident, but we've got to have everybody on this call engaging and then reaching out to grow this population so we can help more families transition.
So what I'm hearing, Allison, is persistence, right?
Yeah.
With that persistence, will you please share your contact information? Either put it in the chat, or if you wouldn't mind just giving your email address and phone number. There have been lots of comments asking how to get in touch with you, because you brought up a good point. All lenders are not created equal. Some may not know about this, and because they don't know, they'll tell you it doesn't exist, right? So if you could put your contact information up, we have lots of people who have questions and would like to follow up with you.
Yeah, I'm putting it in the chat box.
Kenya, I'd like to make a comment
Sure.
behind what Allison just said. And I think you hit the nail on the head with the word persistent. Mm-hmm. Not only the lender has to be persistent, but the buyer needs to be persistent. And we assume that the people over at the housing authority knows the program and the caseworker knows the program. That's not true. They know of we've had caseworkers actually discourage people who qualify for the program to use the program. So everybody's got to be on the same page in working this. We had one that told the buyer, you ought to stay renting. You really shouldn't go home ownership. And this buyer wanted to do it. So the persistent, the bulldog in the buyer has to be there. And don't take no for an answer. Do your own research on this end. And I will share this with you as far as lenders go. If you have a favorite lender, have them get with Allison about doing a class and talking to them about it. It's really key that the people you put on your team know. It can be a nightmare if you don't have the right people on your team and knowing the process of it. And that's where Allison really shines, because she's willing to share. And that's how we got this program here. So I think it's very, very important that one size does not fit all. And if you have a lender that's good at this, where all lenders are not good at everything, you've got to kind of look at where you need to port this buyer to get the deal done. And she's willing to train other lenders. And if there's lenders on this program today, maybe you guys need to reach out to Allison. Maybe she can do a webinar or a Zoom call and kind of go through from the lending side of it. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
So what's interesting is you've covered so much in such a short period. There are also people asking right now, do you have a start to finish checklist? Like, here's where I start, here's where I need to be, here's the end of the process. Allison, do you have a streamlined approach that realtors can have? Because this is an education piece, right? For them and for the buyers through this process.
Well, I've been working on that for about a year now, so I don't have one yet. But
you have it here. You have
yeah,
it
that's
right.
Here. It's all you just got to start digging around, right?
Exactly.
So, but I'll commit to trying to work and getting that back to you guys.
Okay.
By the end of March, or let's just give me till the first week of April. I work a lot with builders, so I'm facing builder quarter in right now. Okay. And Jessica Elvin is a realtor that I work with too, and it's really her persistence in helping me put these slideshows together So although I like to take credit for the slideshow, she was really the one that dug around in my brain one day and got it all down on paper for me.
Well, that's good. Now, listen,
Yeah.
we have a lot of questions to get through, so I'm going to try to get through these as quickly as possible.
Sure.
Someone, let's see, Mimi Kwan asked, are these programs available in 77036 and 77072? She may have missed the earlier portion with the zip codes.
Yeah, it depends on the housing authority. So that, my guess is, covers the Houston Housing Authority area. So yeah, it should be.
Okay, good to know. I'm going to go through another question here from Thurdette Brooks. How does a buyer qualify for this program? Is it anyone on Section 8?
If they've got the housing choice voucher and the housing authority they're with offers homeownership, then they can qualify. So Texas City is the only housing authority I know of in our greater area that doesn't participate in homeownership, but they're great to transfer the buyer to Harris County.
Okay, I'm going to keep going. We're going to do rapid fire here so we can get through all these questions. Janice Watson sent in a question asking, does someone have to be on Section 8 housing to qualify for the homeownership voucher?
That's up to the housing authority. There's nothing in the federal regs that I've read that says they have to be on it for a certain period of time.
Okay. Next question from Cassita Bailey Griffin. Is there a list of lenders that are already familiar with this program?
Yeah, that would be me. So we're trying to get we're trying to get the word out. And I have had there's a lady at NRL that I've recently been helping. She's a teacher. I can't think of her name off the top of my head. And then I know that Homebridge, I've been working with Dixie Sanders over there. She's been in the business forever. They will do the dual payment at Homebridge.
Okay.
So those are the two. Huh?
What about Jerome Pemberton? Where's Jerome?
He's a realtor.
Okay, but he's doing loans too, isn't he?
No,
Okay, no, he's just doing the program like I am. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So, but what I'm hearing is more and more families. I had the Lennar Mortgage Company tell me that, oh no, I have to take the voucher. It's against the law if I don't take the voucher. Now, I've been working on this for 15 years. I about fell over 6 months ago when they told me this, which is great. So I know that Lennar's Mortgage Company will treat as income. They won't do the dual payment, but they will take the income piece.
Okay, that's good to know. Okay, on to the next question. This is from Zelda Kane. Have HHA ever considered making it a requirement for them to stay in the FSS program once they own the home, which would allow them to become homeowners faster and now receive the additional education as a homeowner? Prerequisite is that they have the credit and the required savings before getting approved to purchase. And would you mind spelling out the acronyms for those of us who are not familiar with those acronyms that were just mentioned?
I'm not sure I'm familiar with those acronyms. I mean, the Houston,
Housing Authority, but then FSS.
Family, so we covered that in the slideshow. That's the family self-sufficiency.
Okay.
Not all housing authorities have a family self-sufficiency program. Harris does not, Houston does.
Okay. All right. Good to know. Veronica Fellers is asking, does there have to be a range of the income?
Range of income. Okay. Let me see if I can answer that. If you're a non-elderly disabled household, you have to have a minimum income to enter the program, which is the minimum wage. And I think is what, 16,000 or 15,500. If you're not making that, then they cannot convert your voucher. That is a federal mandate. So that's not something the housing authority can go over. So I get a question all the time. Well, the buyer doesn't work full time. Well, my mortgage guidelines don't state full time. If you have a job, FHA, conventional, everybody says you have a full-time job. You may only be working 30 hours, but you have a job. So now the housing authority has the right to increase the amount to go to homeownership. For example, I'm dealing with the California office right now, and they've increased the amount above minimum wage, obviously, because of the housing out there. I have a Section 8 buyer looking at $650,000. So a little bit different market. Houston, we haven't hit that yet. We might be. It's running that way.
Don't say yet, because we don't need to go there.
Yeah. So so anyway, hopefully that answers the question further.
Okay. Next question. What % of disability is required?
That's a housing question. So they tell me whether or not they're on disabled household or elderly household. I don't make that determination.
Okay. All right. Next question. Do you have to be participating in the Section 8 rental program first, or can you just apply right for the housing ownership voucher?
You have to be on housing in order to have the opportunity to go to homeownership. So, and I get that question a lot. The wait list is what, 7 years now, Shad?
Yes, yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
So if you don't have the voucher and you're trying to get on the voucher, you're looking at a minimum 7 years.
Wow.
So yeah, you have to get the rental voucher first, and then you can go to homeownership, depending what the housing authority has for their criteria.
Okay. How much savings do they need to have? And what's the minimum credit score? I missed these two questions. This is from Angelique Pye.
Sure. I tell my customers to get a 640 or higher because that gets them the best mortgage terms. When it's below that, we get add-ons from Wall Street, and it's higher interest rates. 90% of the time, the buyers can get them above a 640. The housing authority at Houston requires a 620. I don't think Harris County has a requirement. And what was the rest of that question?
Let's see. And
How
what's
much
the
money
minimum
we-
credit score? Let's see.
Oh.
How much savings do they need to have?
And the money, as I've been telling everybody, you need to have at least $2,500 to $3,000 to buy a house, because you've
Okay.
got to cover your earnest money, you got to cover your appraisal, your inspection fees. Can we do it for less? Possibly. But typically, and I honestly, I haven't had an issue with it. Most of the families have it.
Okay. All right. We're moving on to the next question. I am brand new to all of this. What steps do they even need to take to get a voucher? This is from Michelle Brunette.
Yeah, you would have to wait till they opened up at the housing authority to go through a lottery. Is that how it works, Shad?
Yeah, that's a lottery. And they open it up. I don't know what time of year, but if you call the housing authority, they surely will tell you when the time frame is there. Last time I was in a meeting, there were about 28,000 people on this waiting list.
Oh, wow.
So there are quite a few people.
Yeah.
But if you want to find out where you can find these buyers, start marketing toward these buyers. If I'm in property management and I've got some Section 8 renters, I may reach out to them a letter and says, hey, have you thought about buying this property or looking at home ownership? And so those are buyers who are already, renters who are already in there using their vouchers. So the real key, Kenya, is that we've got to get the word out. And this is what HAR is doing, and what you're doing is to help us get the word out, because of most of these buyers, renters do not know about the program.
Yeah.
The
Well,
renters don't know, and realtors don't know either. So
Right,
you're absolutely right.
Well, to piggyback on that, the idea is to get them independent of housing. And
Right.
Shad and I saw a report from Harris County that 40% of the families after 4 years was off the voucher. So that's going to open it up for those 28,000 families sitting behind that.
All right, we're going to move on to our next question from Cassita Bailey Griffin. What is the time frame on getting an HSQ inspection, and is there a wait list?
It really depends. I mean, right now they're going out within 48 hours, so I haven't had an issue with it. And of course, home ownership's a little bit different than rental. For example, in rental, they want the person still living there. In home ownership, they don't require that. And
no, it's fairly quickly. You can get them out fairly quickly. I think the answer is whether or not you wait on that inspection or you have the buyer do their own inspection to give to them. And I found that if you get their regular inspection and give to the HS,
that's right,
it moves a lot
faster.
Yeah, that way.
All right, this is more of a comment. So this goes back to the education piece that we've been talking about. Zelda Kane posted the Texas Affordable Housing Specialist class is being offered by HAR, and this will cover the down payment assistance programs that were mentioned earlier. One date coming up is April 19th, and another date is April 20th. So there are education opportunities that HAR is offering as well. One of the comments here, Allison, how can we contact you? I think you've put that information in the chat box, so we're good there. Let's see, I have a question from Veronica Fellers. Get the pre-approval from lending first and then find the house and get pre-approval of the voucher before closing. So should the buyer put option or earnest money before getting the approval for the voucher? How does a buyer know how many they are approved for?
Okay, so what I do in my process is I have the buyer apply, get the buyer pre-approved, and I will not send out my pre-approval until I get my estimator from the housing authority. So once I've got my estimator, I know they're going to convert that voucher to homeownership. And then I send out all my final numbers to my realtor partner.
Okay. All right. This is more of a comment. I think I mentioned this earlier when we started. Ashley Esperanza wants to say thank you so much for helping her clients. And she's very grateful for everything you've done for them. So that's a great comment from
Thanks,
Ashley. Getting great feedback from individuals saying this is a great program. Someone else is asking, what is the step-by-step process for the buyer? So we've talked about step-by-step process for the realtor and the lender. Is there a step-by-step process for the buyer that may be able to get out of this with you, Allison?
Yeah. I mean, it's mostly just same as any other buyer, but there's a few extra steps. So yeah, like I said, I'm going to commit to having it by, I think April 7th is a Friday.
Okay, that sounds good. You know, this group will hold you to it. So
I know I'm recorded.
Exactly. I have a comment/question from Veronica Fellers. I'm assisting a pair of clients that want to buy a house with other assistance programs, but the pre-approval is not approved due to the ratio being over 45%. But we consider the voucher, would we consider the voucher to be part of the income that they might qualify for the loan?
Great question. So in Anderson Stout, I get it backwards. Is it Anderson Stout, Shad, or is it Stout Anderson? Anderson Stout. He runs the City of Houston Down Payment Assistance Program. For their program, they will allow you to use it as an offset to get that ratio down. So even though my loan might have a higher debt to income ratio, I might be sitting at 54%. They'll allow us to send our transmittal summary, which is it's like a snapshot of the loan that shows the payment, how much they're going to be out of pocket, the sales price, and get it through that way. Tom McCaskin ran the Harris County Housing Authority. He gets it. They love the Section 8 vouchers. So they're a great resource. Use my name. Okay. If you get down there, just tell them, hey, I talked to Al. That's how I got that other person through the system, was they used it. Even though on my loan, I had a higher ratio, they allowed me to use it as an offset to get that buyer closed that now has a $549 payment.
Wow. You know, we're getting comments here, Shad. We're being asked for your contact information in the chat box, if you don't mind, for questions at a later point. One comment that's come in has said that a lot of lenders have refused to work with buyers using assistance programs. What should they do?
I don't know. I think the big challenge right now is the market's so busy that lenders don't want to take the time, because it is harder. You know, I've gotten into with a couple of realtors that they have no idea how hard it is to stack up all these programs to get these buyers closed. And luckily, one of the newer realtors today is actually on the call. So I told her, I said, it's difficult. I mean, you got to check your zip code. You got to check the DPA. You got to do all this stuff. And so right now, with as busy as the market is, they're going for the quote unquote low hanging fruit. Long term, I've been doing this, been in lending almost 30 years. I'm part of this market. Even if I wanted to leave it, I don't think I could. But I'm very passionate about helping new lenders. The one teacher I've got, you know, it might be a good way for them to start in the market. So I got started first-time home buyers. I used to help builders go FHA when FHA wasn't there, and I do their plans, inspection, and everything. And that's how I got to do a lot of loans.
Okay.
And I'd like to say something on that. If the lender doesn't want to work with down payment assistance programs, then you need to just find another lender, because there are lenders out there that want to make this program work. And I think sometimes, Kenya, we put up so many defenses that it's not going to work, and the lender's saying this and that, but it's really not that much more paperwork. And the key is that you have to have a passion of helping people change their lives. I mean, you just have to do it. And Allison is a perfect example of someone who handles all price ranges, but she has a passion for this. And so my feeling is that if a lender says he doesn't do down payment assistance, I thank them and go find me a lender that does. And I have buyers ask the builder lenders, do you use down payment assistance? If I qualify for it, I want to, because it's going to help me stay in this home.
You know, that has a lot to do with mindset, Shad, right? And, you know, being over the stigma of affordable, that's someone else. Well, you know, that someone else is your teacher, your fireman, your police
Right.
officers.
Yeah.
So these are all people that we interact with on a regular basis, and there shouldn't really be a stigma associated with them looking for affordability.
Right.
I'm going to get back to these comments real quickly. I'm being asked by Nini Kwan, Allison, can we text you on 713-202-7005?
Yeah, it's my cell phone.
Perfect. Okay, thank you. Let's see. Shad, this is a question for you. Do you have a checklist for new realtors who find clients with rental vouchers?
I probably could put, I'm like Allison, I hadn't put one together. I just kind of roll with it.
So the
And
two of you have got it
this is
here.
Yeah.
It's
I
not
can
okay.
probably put it on paper. But what I would share with you, it's the same as working with any buyer. It's just that you have to have a lender and you have to communicate with that lender. The communication is key. Allison will tell you, I call her, hey, let's look at this zip code. You know, this is where this house is. If really something they want, she goes, and then she calls me back or sends me a text, this is a go. We've done, and I want people, realtors that are on the call, we did a $300-some thousand house on this program. The guy calls and says, I want my kids in a school.
Goals.
I want to be, this was all about the schools for him. We took him over there and we made the program work, and it all kind of worked out for him.
I've got one lady now who's determined that her son's going to be a doctor, and she was adamant. It took her 6 months, but she's closing next month.
That's awesome.
She got in the right zip code.
Those are success stories. Okay, I'm going to get back to this chat box because the questions keep coming in. This is from Carol Nagel. Where do I find Section 8 people? I think that maybe she's just trying to figure out where she would start.
Yeah, they don't have a list anywhere. Mayor White tried to get a list. I think, like Shad mentioned earlier, they kind of network and find through rental, but I'll let you answer the rest of that, Shad.
Yeah, I think you start marketing and letting them know, either it's Facebook, running ads. If you're on a Section 8 voucher, please give me a call. What about home ownership? Putting an ad together, and I think going out and marketing yourself with this. And if we could get HAR to create a class in the affordable housing class that they're doing, a section on this, that may help. But I think just marketing. You may even call and you're going to laugh at this, realtors, but go down to a housing authority and sit in the lobby and just hand out cards as people come through.
We are in a pandemic. Do you really think people should be going and sitting in a hallway somewhere right now?
Well,
just get masked.
Well, you get them before they go into the lobby. Yeah, it's outside.
Okay, Rita, you've got a new challenge right now. Let's go the education route with our HAR members. I'm not going with Shad and dropping people off at the lobby right now.
Well, you know, you've got to really be aggressive with it. And because the caseworkers, Kenya, are not telling these people about these programs. Sure. So, but if market it, social media, those are some of the things. Run you an ad in one of the local newspapers. Maybe you go and go to apartments and start putting flyers on doors. You know, just old-fashioned belly-to-belly marketing.
Here's a disclaimer. Yep. All of the comments you're receiving today are not approved by HAR because some of these things that Shad's talking about, we're in a pandemic. No, all things considered. No, you're absolutely right. It's going back to the basics. It's the same type of marketing strategy you would have with any other buyer. It's just using a little bit of creativity and marketing. I do have a question that came in that says, do you have a list of inspectors?
I don't, Shad.
Okay.
Yeah, I have a list of inspectors that I use. The Section 8, the HSQ inspectors, they come from the county or the city or which housing authority that you're using. But I do have a list of people that are familiar with the program and are HSQ inspectors themselves. So just my information is in the chat box. If you send me an email, I'll send you the people that I use.
Perfect. And I have a shout out to you, Allison, from Teresa Rhodes. She has a client that's going through the process with you right now, and it's been great and seamless, and she thanks you for that.
Oh, thank you. That's so nice to hear.
Okay, let's see. I have a question from Jessica Bonilla. Could there be two buyers on a voucher, a husband and wife, and only husband working? Could they be approved for buyer voucher?
Yeah, I mean, if they're on the voucher, that's all I care about. I mean, it's just, I don't get into how that voucher gets approved, not approved. I just get the end result. And that is when I send my paperwork over, all I'm looking for is the estimator. I'm just looking for, what part of the mortgage payment are you going to pay?
Okay. All right, well, I'm going to go on to the next. There's another shout out to you, Allison. My goodness, did you put these people in here for these shout outs today?
No.
This is from Rashonda Smith. I've worked with Allison for over 3 years as a realtor and also 5 years previously while working as a homeownership coordinator. She has helped many of my clients purchase homes and have helped change lives. With restrictions at the Housing Authority. She has been able to successfully stack programs and make deals work. This is just showing that your heart is in the right place and you're doing what you can to make a difference in lives. So thank you. It's great.
Okay, and let me add to that for Rashonda. And Rashonda, remember the buyers, and it was sad but funny. I was at a town hall meeting, and we had a buyer that bought at Willcrest and just south of Memorial Drive. And we had both public representatives. These are people that represent us in Congress at a federal level. And then local representatives say, well, they can't buy in that neighborhood. What do you mean they bought in that neighborhood? And I'm like, well, they've been there a year. So you go tell them they got to move out because they're doing great. They wanted the good school districts for Spring Branch. They want all this other stuff. So you go tell them. I'm not telling them. Yeah. So they get in homeownership, they get the added protection of a COA. In rental, they have no protection about discrimination on that voucher. In homeownership, they have a COA. And there's an army of attorneys that are out there willing to help. And I've testified in federal court on this to protect these buyers. So home builders have to take it. They all got to participate.
That's good to know. Again, the more of us that are empowered with this information, the easier it will be for that next person to come through.
Exactly.
I have a message from Rita, and I'm not going to say who this other message is from. It says they love your hustle. That must be about you, Shad, with going to sitting in the hallway somewhere. But Rita has confirmed that we can expand our affordable housing programs offered at HAR. You can look out for those and not Shad's tips at har.com/education. You're never going to live that down, Chad. I want you to know that. Let's see. Another question here. How many years do they have to be on the Section 8 voucher?
The federal guidelines don't have a time limit on it. Most of the housing authorities want them in there at least a year. And the reason they want that is they want them used to the system. They want them to pay their rent on time. They want them to understand inspections. So, and I've seen this nationwide now that I literally get phone calls from all over the country on how this works. So that's why. But by the federal guidelines, there's not a statute on it. I've closed families after they've been in there 3 months. I don't advise it. I really think they need to be in there a year.
Okay. Shad, you've got somebody here who's got your back. Someone named Claude Humbert. They told me that I need to get my vaccine quickly so I can go sit in the hallway at the Housing Authority. So there you go, Shad. We had someone post an inspector here, Keisha Mitchell, an inspector that she uses. So that's great as a resource. Let's see, we're getting just lots of kudos here. Here's a good question. Does Galveston County participate in the voucher program?
They used to. I called them about a year ago, and that's where everybody can get involved to get them to open it up. Shad and I worked back when Mayor White was in office because the Houston Housing Authority on their website said, yeah, we do home ownership, yet, oh yeah, we really don't. And when people call in, they wouldn't. So with Mayor White's backing, we got it all opened up. So it's up to the community. You've got to get in there and have a voice. As Shad said, get your congressman involved, get your state representative involved, get local city council.
Okay.
Allison, Kenya, I have a quick question for Allison. I saw in the chat, but Allison, tell us the loans that work with this program. Would you run them through VA, FHA, conventional? Yes. Would you tell us which loans work?
Yeah. If you're doing the dual payment, the only loan that allows the offset is FHA. Now, Shad and I are both working with, was it Fannie or Freddie that you saw up in DC, Shad?
It was
Because
Freddie.
right, so I get a phone call from Chad saying, "Hey, Allison, I'm up here, and they're telling me they want more affordable houses. Can't you sell them to Freddie Mac?" And I'm like, "Well, they need to do the dual payment." "Oh, we've never done that." I said, "Well, let me send you the guidelines because I did it when I was at GMAC back in 2006 and 2007. So let me just shoot that over to you so you can show the guy that, oh yeah, in fact, we really did do this." So, but most of them are either conventional or FHA.
All right. Well, this is a good way for us to bring everything to an end. Our last comment here is from Nellie Mitford, and it says we must do more toward affordable housing. And she's absolutely right. It is our responsibility to do more in this space and to make housing, which is a human right, available to everyone. It's our duty for sure. Any closing comments, Allison and Chad?
I'll let you go first, Chad.
I just want to thank HAR for reaching out, and Rita and her team, and you, Kenya, being on the forefront of trying to realize that affordable housing is really workforce housing. And it's all relevant, just depending on where you live. And putting this program on, our whole goal as realtors is to help people change their lives, help create wealth, bring dreams that they've been dreaming about home ownership the American way. And I just want to thank HAR for allowing Allison and I to come on and share this information with you. And it works. More importantly, it works. And I just want, it's not one or two onesies that we've done. We've done lots of these. So it does work. Thank you so much, HAR.
Well, and I want to piggyback on that. I want to leave everybody with a very interesting statistic. So when I had a bunch of naysayers, because I was fighting everybody when all this started, I mean, everybody. And so Jerome, who Shad mentioned earlier, and I would stand on the steps of housing. That's why he mentioned that, every Tuesday and Thursday for 90 days. And every Tuesday and Thursday, we would take 10 loan applications, or just, the inquiry stuff. Without fail, every time one buyer met what we call buyer A criteria. They had the credit score, they had the money saved, they had the job. Every time we did it for 90 days. Tom McCaskill, I meet him through Mayor White. You need to talk to Allison. Tom McCaskill doesn't believe me, but he's like, you know what? Let's find out. So he has a home fair. Guess what happened? 23 home buyers came in to find out. 2 families immediately went to homeownership. After that, 30% of the buyers just need a little bit of help. We call them B buyers. It takes maybe a little bit of credit help. Maybe they need to save a little bit more money. Within 90 to 120 days, they can go to homeownership. Do you know what that would do to Houston, Texas, if we converted 40% of 30,000 families? Imagine what it would do nationwide to cities that aren't doing so well, that need the stimulus, because these are federal dollars. These aren't coming from local dollars. These are coming out of DC and HUD money. It's very, very powerful program. But there's a whole lot of what's the right word, Chad? Misunderstandings about what it's really about. These are qualified buyers that stay in their homes. I don't know any of the buyers that I've helped that have gone to foreclosure. In fact, I had one lady, God rest her soul, had passed away. It was about 11 years ago. Do you know the housing authority stepped in, moved the sister in to help the 2 boys, and she still pays the mortgage. So they kept the house.
Those are success stories. I just want to say thank you so much for being leaders and trailblazers, both of you, Allison and Chad, in fighting for affordable housing. This is something that you just didn't think of overnight, or because it may seem to be cliche to do things in this space. You've always been true warriors in this space. So thank you so much for your dedication and your commitment to helping everyone get into housing, because everyone deserves homes. So with that being said, we are going to wrap up today's session. I want to thank each and every one of you for joining us today, for educating yourselves, and for wanting to learn more. I think 2 important topics that we can take away from today is education and advocacy. Education, making sure that we're all informed. If we're informed, we can inform clients and we can inform lenders. Advocacy, going to our elected officials and making sure they understand the importance of affordable housing. One thing we did learn is that Shad will go sit in a hallway somewhere to get your attention. So if you see him somewhere, don't ask any questions. Just know what he's there on a mission. Okay. This is the second in a series of monthly webinars that HAR will be offering. Next month, we'll be back and we're going to talk about the Seth Down Payment Program. So getting down with Seth Down Payment. The date for that session will be Wednesday, April 21st from 12 to 1:30. Registration can be accepted at har.com/webinars. And thanks again to Allison and Chad for sharing their experience, their expertise, their passion, and their knowledge about affordable housing. And again, thank you for your time today. With that being
Thank you.
said, we will see you next
Thank
time,
you.
and happy St. Patrick's Day.
Yes, you too. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.